Welcome to a new video. My name is John Skippy Cool. Welcome. Hey, so better camera, wide view, cool, huh? So I'm going to do a little demonstration to show you some of the possibilities, some of the fun things you can do with Unify. And then after this, I'm going to show you some of the basic MIDI file type things with MIDIBox. I want you to understand how MIDIBox works when we're done with this. I'm going to try to be fast. Fingers crossed, because that's not my forte. But here we go. So top down. Hello. MIDI file velocity. That's timing, so I'm changing. I should show you here over here. So watch. Speed. Filtering. I love decay. So this is a groove from Cloud City from the World Percussion Kit. These are all new percussion samples. By the way, next week, a compact conga that I sampled is being added to Unify's Cloud City for free. It's crazy. 50 samples. Sounds so good. I'll show you more about it next week. Let's go over here and say BPM drum. Let's add some groove elements to this. I'm going to use this no pitch shift. And I want this sound to have a little bit more space. Let's go over here and say add a little room reverb. Okay, that's nice. BPM drums, let's go over to the Chaos Kit. Now for this one, I'm going to go to Unify, I'm going to tune it up. I'm going to go to chorus. That's pretty good. I'm going to go to the Flex EQ, make it a little bit brighter. The other thing that's fun to remember is this is a plugin that can be inside of a DAW. So this timing manipulation you're doing is completely independent of your sequencer that's playing. So I could have a whole song playing and still be over here going. And then when you want, you bring it back down and it's totally locked to tempo. It is so fun to play with. So let's take a step into simplicity land for a moment. Let's go to the standard library, just drum kit. There's 4 drum kits inside of Unify's standard library. They're right here. There's the Airwave Trance Kit. There's Beast Drum Kit. There's the OMG Super Pop. And then Vintage King is okay. So every one of these, if you notice, has a MIDI box, and every one of them has bypass turned on. So if you click this off, now it plays. Okay. Let's open up MIDIBox and let's go through some of the parameters. There's some fun things in here to control. First of all, we're accessing something from the Unified Standard Library. It's Vintage King Unify Factory Groove Stack, and it's a stack. Now, if you click right here, it'll go to the folder, and you can see that there's 1 through 10 MIDI files available And then there's this stack. There's this thing inside of sequencers. Some don't do this, where you can layer up a whole bunch of different MIDI files on the same MIDI channel, and when you save it out as a MIDI file, you export it, it groups them together and makes it a type 1 instead of a type 0 MIDI file. And what happens then is that makes it so that it shows up in like this list, what we call playlist, of the grooves. So I can, and we program our kits so that you can change this playlist, what groove this is, right here with this knob. And if we look over here inside of Unify to what's going on, this is pattern number, it's knob number 8. It might not be assigned to a MIDI CC, so you could say MIDI learn and now move a controller on your whatever hardware device you have, or you just automate it from just moving it. But it's assigned to this parameter right here, track number. It's inside. Let's go down here to instrument, MIDI Effect, MIDIBox. Right here, the very first parameter in MIDIBox you can change is track number. So by signing that up, I'm changing that pattern. We have a tuning parameter here. There's the note to chorus tune, which means that we have a special connection between MIDIBox and Groove Sampler. So I'm transposing the pitch. If I open up Groove Sampler, right? So you can use that as a way of doing cool groove things. It's very fun. Now, if you turn this off, it doesn't change pitch, no matter where I play on the keyboard. When we first made MIDIBox, this is how it worked. There was no pitch change. I was like, Shane, this is kind of, it needs to do more than this. And so we came up with a system where if you turn on note to chorus, it's actually MIDI CC number 127. It's sending out that this root key, whatever note you play on your MIDI keyboard, equals MIDI CC value 64 as a secondary stream going out of MIDIBox. And Groove Sampler can pick that up and go, oh, okay. That means no transpose. But as soon as I play any note, see how it changes? Each note up the keyboard, up to 64 up or 64 down, equals transposing by that semitones. Okay, so that is a way of getting more out of MIDI files. It works cool for this. If you go to the recycle files, RX2, a recycle file is a little more special. Let's go to the breakdown. Okay, so this is a drum loop, and I've chopped it up into pieces. Let's turn off MIDIBox, and if you look on the keyboard, all these samples, all the way up to here, right? So this MIDI file is actually playing chromatically up the keyboard, chromatically. It's not drum kit like the previous where you had kicks and snares and hi-hats and so forth. So it's a different approach. But we still have the ability to do the transposing by note, which means that now when I play different notes, it's transposing the setting, and it makes these loops so much more usable to have them all over the range. Now, if you were to say we wanted to go over here, and let's say we wanted to add this, and let's just say add it as a layer into the new patch, right? And I'm gonna option click because I don't need any auxiliary buses right now. Now, if I want, I could go to this first MIDIBox, which is playing the breakdown. And if I change my root to be a different note like G, let's go G2. So while I'm playing C, there's now on G2 is where the middle of the transpose is for the breakdown. And as I change this, it's now way down there, which means it's having to play transposed up. I now have it at the A sharp 4, which is G4, so A sharp 4. There's the normal pitch. But this other drum groove is still at C3. So as you add drum grooves into Unify from all these places, let's say we want to add Africana breakdown. Right? We could go to this MIDI box, and just by changing the root for each one of these, right? So right there alone, by just loading grooves and then playing with the root note for each of these elements, and you get all sorts of fun varieties. Okay? And it transposes. Now, I'm going to give you a tip. If you recall, I did 2-3 libraries for Omnisphere, where they're the OMG drum libraries, where low C is playing a groove, and you can play low C to start it and stop it with the latch mode that's inside of Omnisphere. Well, we've implemented a very similar variation on that theme inside of Unify. So I'm going to go over here to each of these layers, and I'm going to set them so that the top note is way down here on C1. And by doing that, that makes the rest of the keyboard available so I can load something in Jam. Now, because I have that note transpose on, bad things have happened to the groove, right? So maybe the best way to fix this is to solo each of the layers. I want that. And if you want, you can right click and just play C, and now it's set to that pitch. And let's do the same for this other groove right here. So now, cool. So I have the notes, they play on low C. Now I need to go through, and we're going to use mono latch, which just means you play one note, it starts. If you play that same note again, it stops. It's different than Omnisphere's is a polyphonic, which we also have, but this is just mono. We actually have a new mode coming that's going to be really cool. I'll tell you more about it when it shows up. Okay, so now I'm in a sequencer. I'm inside of Logic right now. So I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to turn on the click so you can hear it. Because it's really important to distinguish. If you're in a sequencing environment, Unify totally gives up to your sequencer's clock. So if I went to 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, it goes, no, that was 3. It won't start over on 1 no matter what I set the transport to. I could set this to restart 1, 2. It still thinks that's the 1. So if you're in a standalone, there's all sorts of ways with the transport to determine where the 1 is. You can set it so that just low C becomes the 1 by using these ranges to control what part of the keyboard Unify is listening to. But when you're in a sequencing environment like this with Logic, Logic is the conductor. There's nothing you can do to get around that fact. So it's just going to follow the clock. And you can hit play. See how it started over? I stopped it, and I'm going to go. I just started the sequencer and it restarted it over. Which is fine. You just need to make sure your sequencer is running so that you know where the 1 is when you start adding parts. So for in this example, I'm going to go over here to BPM, I'm gonna go over here and say BPM keys. Let's add ping pong piano. So I right click, I say load into a new Unify. So it makes an entire Unify that is that entire patch as a single plugin layer. And right? It's following along. Okay, so there's a lot you can do with the layering of rhythm inside of Unify. Let's go back to the standard library to a drum kit. And we're going to call up, let's say, the Beast drum kit. Okay, let's turn on MIDIBox. And it's playing the groove that's assigned to it. I downloaded from Groove Monkey some free MIDI groove files. They have them in all sorts of different styles, right? Including Doom. Very cool. So if we open up MIDIBox and we say no library, that way I can click. I'm going to just navigate to the Groove Monkey MIDI files. Here they are. Let's go to Doom. I'm really curious about this. And say, let's say verse 1. That don't sound right. The reason it doesn't sound right is because I designed the drum kits inside of Unify the same way as I do them for Korg synthesizers. I transposed the general MIDI map up 1 octave, and then I have the lower range of the keyboard for additional kicks and snares. So to get MIDI files to play right, you need to go over here and transpose it plus 12. Hey! This is Doom. Right? Now, if you want, you can have other plugins besides Unify's plugins for drums play. So let's go over here and say duplicate the layer. Let's have the same, let's mute the top one, and let's go over here. Instead, let's go to our favorites. I have Contact here. Let's call up a drum kit from Contact. And we'll also call in a plugin from somewhere else. So let's scroll down here. We're at the very bottom. Okay, here we go. Drum kits. Let's say 70s drummer. Let's do the tight kit. Need some sort of a cool tight groove thing. And when I play, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because I believe the MIDI file, MIDI channel is not 1. So go to Contact right here where it says MIDI channel and just set it to Omni. And unlike Unify, this needs to be transposed back down to 0 because these haven't been, they don't have the extra kicks and snares. And on top of this, let's do this. Let's duplicate, say duplicate. And let's go over here instead of here, another drum kit source that I use when I'm doing big music productions often is Steven Slate. He's got a really cool plugin with a ton of like radio ready drum kits. So Steven Slate. Let's go over here and let's choose. Now this is RAM, so it's going to start to wear out your computer a little bit. But let's say Classic Chill. And once it gets done loading, so then you can play with pan. You can go over and do processing to each of these flavors differently and separately. Put a cool reverb on this one. Put convolution reverb on things. But that's how you get MIDI files to work inside of MIDIBox. Now, again, this note to chorus isn't going to work for them. They stay in the same notes. But Unify does. So it's fun to layer a Unify layer with another drum kit from something that doesn't change. So you can... Okay, so 24 hours have passed. I have uploaded a video on Obsession, and I've been working away on the video that this will be part of for MIDIBox. I want to show a couple important things that are really important for MIDIBox. There's a few more parameters in MIDIBox I want to cover. So let's see. So open up MIDIBox. We're back to Beast Drum Kit. I have enabled MIDIBox. So we're back to our cool groove, right? Now, if you recall, in our last episode, we took a MIDI file from the Groove Monkey free MIDI grooves. We took the one from Doom. And if you look in here, there's 25 grooves. Some are fills, but there's all sorts of different live, ride, trend. If it says fill, we'll talk about those in a minute. But I want to show you how you can get it set up so that you can use the pattern knob to change between different MIDI files. Now, these could be this, where you've downloaded MIDI files. There's lots of different libraries that you buy for Serum or something, and they include drum samples and they include MIDI files. You could take all those MIDI files and put them together. You could take your own grooves that you created for your own song from your album and set those up so you could switch between those in real time in a live show. There's all sorts of applications for how to use this. Unfortunately, I don't think all sequencers, all DAWs, currently do this stuff that we're going to be showing you. So I'm apologizing if yours doesn't do this, if it's not supported. But send an email to the developers and say, I need to be able to export type 1 MIDI files, because it is a unique ability and we're finding some cool uses for it. Let's take a look at it this way. So open up MIDIBox, right? We're playing our groove. But I'm going to click in the blue and that will open up the little patch browser so I can search around. I'm going to go to the song. This is Doom, right? It's in the Doom folder. And I could choose one of these, like I could say chorus 1. And just like in 24 hours ago, I need to transpose this up plus 12 to work. So if you load a MIDI file and it sounds off with the 4 drum kits inside of Unify, it's because they're off by an octave. So just offset by plus 12. And now I get to show you one of these new parameters. So right here is this include notes, and you have a key range here. You can take a complex MIDI file and bring it down to where it's just the snare drum. Or in this case, like there's some sound up at the top part of the keyboard that's supposed to be playing some sort of alternative right or something like that. We'll bring this down. Until it goes away. Yeah, so it's on B3. So it's gone. I can use this to limit the range. Another thing we have, I asked Shane to include an exclude notes, because a lot of times, like the lower part of the keyboard, typically in a drum kit for across the keyboard, left lower part is bass drums, snare drums, hi-hats, cymbals, right? Well, what if you wanted to get rid of the snare drum in a groove? In the past, you need to use multiple layers, one for the kick, one for the hi-hats, because the snare in the middle is going to make you split it into 2 separate files, right? Well, exclude notes lets you do this with just a single MIDI file. So I can go finding the snare. See, I said exclude. So it's playing everything but the notes of the groove, which is pretty cool. But let's say it's between, I think probably between C, E, like E. I found the kick drum. And there's the snare drum. So the D2. Now, so I've got that irritating sound. So in a case like this, maybe we could go to Guru Sampler and find a different drum kit. Like this, maybe Super Pop. And this. Let's go to MIDIBox and have it transpose it up in pitch. But exclude is let me keep out the snare drum. If I said include that note, it's just the snare that it includes, because everything outside of that range in the low range and the upper range are being filtered out. So this is a really handy tool to take a MIDI file and simplify it. Also, I should point out, if you go to the real-time knobs, I could go over here and I could say linked parameters, and I could go to this part, to the MIDI Effect, MIDIBox, minimum output note, maximum output note. So I could take this top note and I could set it so I have my range, and you could actually like fine-tune, tweak it so that as I play, just a snare, back just to the snare. So you could limit it, and I could have the other one take it to go to the kick drum. So I could say, go link parameters, go MIDIBox. Let's go to the minimum and say in the opposite direction like this. So that way I can have the kick drum if I want or not, and then add the cymbals in. So you could get this to where you can have variety. No kick drum. So you could have hi-hats and ride cymbals and stuff you could be able to get from variation. See? So the ability to assign macro knobs to these parameters in MIDIBox can be really, really handy. So right there is your include or exclude notes and your ranges. So you could have it to include only the range in the middle or exclude what's in the middle and keep what's on the outsides. And these two note ranges are assignable to knobs. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to cover notes. This is the MIDI effects, like MIDI CC stuff. We'll do that in a separate video. Pitch bend and CCs are allowed to be passed through if you want. So I could be playing a groove. And if you're working with other controller-based plugins, you could have MIDI CCs. It will allow them to pass through, which is nice because usually when you're using MIDI effects, it's a wall. No MIDI goes through. But we have selectable to allow MIDI to be passed through if you wanted to. It's for pitch bend, for CCs, or notes. And notes is where it gets really fun. So I'll do a separate video on that. This other transpose is important to realize. This is for when you're playing things that are tonal based, which is going to be a separate video. We'll talk about that and making our own melodies and stuff like that. If you use this on the drums, what happens is this whole drum kit map that's perfectly playing a kick drum, perfectly playing a snare and the hi-hats, shifts up and down the keyboard. Right? Unless I play D2. That's the note that's currently set to play this drum MIDI file correctly to the right note assignments. And if I was to right click and say C, now I have C3 doing it. Right? I want to move on to the ability to make your own MIDI file type 1. Okay? So let's put this away for a second. I'm going to use Logic and I'm going to open up this and I'm going to go to this MIDI file. Now, when I drag these in, you'll notice these groove parts are the right length. If I drag in a fill, it's only a measure. Now, in order for it to work in MIDIBox properly, you would have to take this part and you'd have to copy it so that it's copied and copied and copied. And then Command J to join. Let's put this at the very end of the list since it's a fill. Let's say down here. I'm just going to do this for a handful just so you can see how this works. So I've got these different grooves. Live. Trash can ending. Verse 1. Okay. So I have, this is 6. Let's see, do we have chorus ride? So I probably want to get these a little bit more into a sequence of orders because it's going to go from the top one down, especially if I number them. Usually what I do is number them. So they all say 105 and then it's going to go alphabetical. So I'd probably just go like, call it this and say 01, command here. So I'm going to do this quickly, 02, 08. Okay, so I now have 8 different MIDI files. I have them all on an instrument that's the same MIDI channel for Unify. So if I play, it's going to sound really weird. Now I could transpose it here, but I probably won't. I'll probably keep it so it's at the normal pitch that it's supposed to be at, and then I can adjust it for whatever layer. In case I want to use contact or something, then these would just play straight away. So you select them all. So I go up here and under File, you go to Export and you say Export Selection as a MIDI file. And make sure we're on the desktop. And we're going to call this Doom Monkey Stack. Just so I remember it's from Groove Monkey. And save. And there it is. Unify remembers exact locations. And if you change something to a different location with MIDIBox, it won't load. It doesn't have any searching and all that stuff. So make sure that if you do this, that you put this into a folder on your hard drive, a MIDI file folder somewhere, and then you keep it there. And then it will be all right, and it will always call it up and not give you an error. So let's get back here. Let's go to MIDIBox. Let's click here to load. We go to the desktop, right? And we say Doomstack. And by selecting that, I have loaded, as you can see, it has made separate tracks for each of these MIDI files. So I can, let's get the sequencer playing so I can hear. Right? Right? So I have all these different grooves. Now, I have already a knob right here already set up, I believe. Right. Because I called up a Beast kit which had stack already set up, so this knob is already set up. So now, with this drum kit's kind of weird, right? So if I go over here, let's go back to contact just for fun. Let's see, last night we did like the 70s. Let's do 80s. And let's do a Chrome kit. Oh yeah, Chrome. So it loads up. Remember, you want to go to MIDI and you want to change this to be Omni. So because this is back to a standard map without the kicks and snares, double click to set this to 0. Just click and drag. I need the whole range. There. I got a drummer on a knob. So, if you take the time and if your DAW supports it, the rule is to just layer, actually I think I deleted so I could say undo. You layer the MIDI files all on the same instrument that's all set to the same MIDI channel. They're just set to all, doesn't matter. And then you select all of them when you export. And you export, make sure that when you make MIDI files that it starts at measure 1. No notes. If you look at these notes here, when you go to the piano roll, make sure none of them go beyond the end of the MIDI file note-wise. If this is hanging on like this, then when this is spit out as a MIDI file, it's going to add an extra measure because of this note overhang. So make sure it's shorter than the last measure of your MIDI file that you want to make. When you load it into Unify after doing this, you'll be able to tell quickly by opening MIDIBox, and it will say right here 8 bars. The velocity, this is really lovely because we have both a scale and an offset. So you can also assign these to knobs. So with the controls that we have for drums, you can actually go to some really cool places. So it's really exciting. That's MIDIBox. And we haven't even gotten into JitterBox, which this is pretty human feel. But if you add JitterBox after this, go creative JitterBox, and just bring it so that it's randomly, like maybe, 20 milliseconds. Oh, let's go back to velocity. Now it's even more human. MIDIBox and JitterBox are made to work together. They do all sorts of really cool things. So we're going to do another video on JitterBox all by itself, but experiment with this. There's so much fun. You could actually really quickly just take this and say, duplicate this layer, have this JitterBox be delayed like say a quarter note, plus or minus 100 to 100 with notes and a minimum of 16th notes, and now you have like ghost notes. And then if you like put this through distortion like noise box or something like that, it's crazy fun stuff. So we'll get into all that stuff in future videos, but I want to make sure you guys get the vibe for MIDIBox. It's so flexible. The fun thing to think about is that this can be layered with 10 other drum grooves and have these knobs change the timing of all 10 grooves in different amounts if you want. It's just insane amount of power. Like if we take like a whole bunch of these different grooves, like so go hip skip, so it's playing a groove. Let's go to Cloud City, and let's have like, I like this one here, the Worldly Get Down. And let's go over here, have some claves. Let's go to drums. Okay, knob 8. Is changing pattern in all 4 layers. Remember, I can transpose up the keyboard while I'm doing this. Here's velocity. Here's speed. We have filtering. There's so what you can do with this, check this out. This is so cool. Get rid of all this for now. Let's go record and turn on Latch at the same time. So we go over here and say Latch, and we go, let's see, turn off this, and we go. So with Latch, it's watching what I'm doing, so I can. Okay, it recorded all of that. So I can go back to this and say play. Right? Didn't do anything until we get to here. Now maybe I just like that part, like 6, Command T, split, and Command to 8, Command T, split. Get rid of this beginning part, get rid of this ending part. So if this is up here, now I can go over here to 1, move. And then duplicate this by just clicking and going like this, and copy. And now I have a groove that's based on playing and cycling through probably about 60 or 70 MIDI files on 5 different tracks. That's just crazy, crazy fun. So it won't be the same groove as anybody else because you've made it by automating the parameters and then choosing a piece and looping it. So have fun. MIDIBox is a labor of love that Shane and I put together, and what it can do is really cool. So I hope this all gets those creative juices flowing, gets the songwriting happening. That's what we're here for. We want to inspire you so that you have lots of fun with these new tools, new ways of doing things with rhythm. I want to hear this on the radio. Let's go. All right, be well. I'll see you in another video soon. Thank you.